Welcome to BusinessWhitt's Make the Right Moves webinar series. Notice the chess pieces on the screen. I'm a chess player. Develop and control your pieces to control the board to win the game. Make the right moves for your business and achieve success. So BusinessWhitt is a focal point franchise powered by Brian Tracy. And Brian Tracy is one of the true gurus in the world of business coaching. He's authored over 60 books, trained over 2 million salespeople. He's done shows, podcasts, interviews, been on stage with the world's best. He's done it all. And I've been engaged with the Focal Point organization for the past 6 years, and it's been an honor to learn from the best. So I put a little Focal Point tag on my logo, like Intel does with computers. Intel Inside is for desktops and laptops. Focal Point is inside BusinessWhitt. BusinessWhitt's powered by Brian Tracy. So we build this as the best one-hour sales webinar ever, and our focus is on persuasion strategies. Now, Daniel Pink is one of the best-selling authors out there on sales, and he wrote a book called To Sell is Human. And he states that people spend 40% of their time persuading, convincing, and cajoling others to part with their resources in exchange for what they're trying to do. Trying to move others is selling, pure and simple. So whether you are in an actual sales role or an operational role or in a non-sales selling for dollars role, this selling concept, these persuasion strategies are really important for you. So I've been a coach for a long time. I have 4 kids, and I've coached Little League Baseball, AYSO soccer, high school girls golf. I coach my boys through the testosterone U19 level at AYSO. That's sort of big boy soccer. And then I coach my daughter's 16-year-old team, and then their all-star team. And I got to tell you, learning to coach 16-year-old girls was quite an experience. At the end of the season, though, the team gave me a sweatshirt with Coach John scripted on the front. And, you know, I'm really proud of that. It's really special because that really validated my time as a coach. And really, my time is limited. The most valuable thing I can give to anyone is my time, pure and simple. My goal is to trade my time to help people achieve success. And today, we're trading some time so you guys learn more about persuasion strategies. How can you be more effective in your sales activity? I've been in the coaching space for 16 years, the last 6 years with Brian Tracy. And, you know, like I say, it's been an honor to serve with the Focal Point team. I've learned so much in the last 6 years. It's amazing. And when I was young and I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We were the family that had to fix things. You know, we had tools, and whether it was the car or the washing machine or the refrigerator, you know, Dad was the handyman, we fixed it. We had tools to make tools. And what this means is that I'm pretty comfortable with risk. I believe that I can get into things and figure stuff out. Now, sales isn't necessarily risky, but it is something that you have to do. You have to take action to become proficient. You can't just read about it. And I believe you can get better when you understand the concepts you're trying to employ. I believe that improvement is always possible, and I also believe it's always required. Life is a downward escalator. It's always moving down. If you aren't walking up, you're going down. You don't get to stay static. So today we're going to share the best of the best when it comes to persuasion and sales concepts. We're going to move very fast because the best ever has to cover some ground. All I ask in return is that you complete a 1-page survey at the end so that I can get better. And I'll talk about that survey quite a bit. I want to do everything I can to get you to get the information and knowledge and the skills learning out of this webinar, and then to have you send me that particular survey so I get some feedback from you and I can get better. All right, so here's our objectives for today, right? We're going to talk about the definition and value of persuasion, and I think we've kind of covered that to some degree, right? Persuasion of getting other people to do what it is that we would like them to do, and the value, obviously, is something that we use all the time, and this is how we're able to accomplish our goals and objectives. It's all about actionable and usable information. Every time we go through this, I'll share a little bit of time, and I'll say, write this down. In fact, in a minute, I'm going to make sure that you have a piece of paper and a pen so you can write stuff down and take advantage of the information that you're getting out of this. We're going to talk about the 5 key strategies for success. We'll recap that at the end. And then ultimately, we're going to talk about this thing called defining a method for placing your X. Now, this came out of Brian Tracy's book called Focal Point. And, you know, obviously, Focal Point came out of that as well, right? And what Brian really talks about here is like, what's the most important thing? And he tells the story about the rocket scientist. And NASA's launching a rocket, and it's on the launch pad, and they're doing the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, and all of a sudden one of the engineers has to say, hey, quit, it's not working, it's going to fail, we have to scrap it, and they have to put the whole thing on pause, and they have to go to work and try to figure it out. They get on the launch pad again some months later. Same thing happens, 20, 19, 18, raises their hand, flag it, can't go. And so they're like, okay, we're going to have to bring in the expert. And they bring in the expert rocket scientist. And he comes down and he walks around the platform, climbs up the scaffold. And at some point there, he identifies this dial, and he takes a big black felt pen and he puts a big black X on that dial. And he said, this is your problem. Fix this dial and you'll fix your problem. And lo and behold, when they replace the dial and they fix the dial, then the launch activity occurs as planned. So in the meantime, he sends an invoice to the Nassau administrator, and that invoice is for $10,000, and the administrator is just shocked. It's like, $10,000? You know, you're only here for 20 minutes, really? You know, and so the engineer says, well, all right, would you like me to redo that invoice? The administrator says, yeah, certainly, that'd be very nice. And a week later, the administrator gets a new invoice, and it's for the same amount. It's $10,000, but it has 2 line items on it. And the first says the price for putting an X on the dial, $1. And the second says, knowing what dial to put the X on, $9,999. And that's the key. We need to figure out what the X is, right? And so today, I'm going to ask you to take out a piece of paper, make sure you have it. We're going to go over goals in just a minute. And we want to identify what that X is for you. You're going to learn all kinds of things today, but out of that, all of that stuff, you still need to identify what that X is. What is the most important stuff? What are you going to do with this? All right, so you can't really teach a man to do anything, right? But you can help him find it within himself. That's my goal here. I'm trying to help you find these things for yourself, because the answers that you write down on your piece of paper are going to be yours. They're not the ones that I came up with. All right, so here's where you're going to take out a sheet of paper, and we want this to be a working session. So take out this piece of paper and then jot down. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to jot down your goals for today. What is it that you would like to achieve from this webinar, from this session here? So I'm going to give you 60 seconds, and then if you'd like, go ahead and post those in the chat box if you're comfortable sharing, and Tammy will help us. We'll share those out if you put some of those into your chat box. So I kind of want to play the theme to Jeopardy here.
Dun-dun, dun-dun. I don't know how to remember it. I'll get that queued up for the next time.
Okay.
Dun, 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 dun. I have been watching Bugs Bunny, so a little classical music. Got no sharing yet. Anybody out there that you know, has some specific goals that they want to accomplish today out of today's session? Overcoming objections in selling.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. We're going to be really hitting hard on price objections.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go another 10 seconds here.
How to close. Improve my conversation rate so that my conversion rate, excuse me, so that I can get more clients.
Okay. So now we've got people have a chance to write down their goals, and we'll go into the first section of what we're going to cover. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is attitude and belief. As a salesperson, without attitude and belief. So ask yourself, right, you know, how important is attitude, and what is belief? What is that foundation? And I'm going to go over this thing called the Carnegie Triangle. And Andrew Carnegie was a turn-of-the-century businessman, and at one point he was the richest man in North America, and maybe even in the world, but I don't know that for a fact. And he commissioned a foundation called the Carnegie Foundation to do a study on why some people are more successful than others. And they spent a lot of money, did a lot of research on it, and here's what they found out. So in the beginning, they realized that skills and knowledge play about 15% of the role of success, right? So if you have skills, you've got a chance, right? If you have knowledge, that's a chance, but really it's only 15%. Now, can you imagine, or what do you think that other triangle is, right? The triangle, 3 sides, skills, knowledge, right? And the other triangle is attitude. And so if you don't have the right attitude, and sales is such an attitude-driven space, right? If you don't have the right attitude, then if you don't believe you can do it, and you think about it, sales is full of rejection. There's a lot of no's. Now, baseball player, right? 3 out of 10 times they're successful, and they're $1 million a year salary, multi-million dollars these days. And so they're going to fail 7 out of 10 times. And that's kind of like what happens with a salesperson too, right? You don't close every deal. You don't win every deal. But you have to believe you're going to win every deal. The baseball player goes up with the belief that he can hit the ball and he can make a difference. As a salesperson, you have to have the same thing. Now, if you think about it, some have this belief on a natural basis, but most people don't. And think of 10 people that you know, and how many have this kind of success attitude kind of already built into them. Ask yourself, do you have it? And by the way, do you have it, and does it stay with you all the time, every day? Because it kind of goes up and down, right? So most people have to learn it, and the good news is that it's learnable. Now, Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits, it's a great book on efficiency and how to be effective. He talks about always remembering to sharpen the saw. So it's always learning, always growing, always practicing. And then Zig Ziglar, one of the famous motivational guys, said, some people say that motivation doesn't last. And his response is, hey, neither does bathing, and that's why they recommend it daily. And so this attitude thing takes some consistency, right? You can't just say, oh, I have it and it'll last forever. If this is something you'd like to learn some more about this, right? Learn, improve, or practice, the survey that you're going to get, write attitude on the top of that survey, and I'll send you a copy of Brian Tracy's ebook, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. It's a terrific book. It's a fairly short read, but it's really important. It's really valuable from an attitude standpoint. So now let's talk about making the right moves to enhance your business and sales success. Take a minute to jot down your key notes. You can post them in the chat box if you like, but write down, take 15 seconds and write down your notes about what you've picked up from this Carnegie Triangle. Skills, attitude, and knowledge. What do you want to do with that? All right, so now we're going to talk about one of the formulas that I promoted in the marketing material, Gleischer's Formula for Change. And David Gleischer was a clinical psychologist back in the 60s, and he studied behavioral change and why do some people change. And he came up with this formula right here, what you see. So it says D times B times F is greater than R. And one of the reasons I like this formula is because you only have to remember 3 things, right? So let's go through what this is. So the R stands for resistance. Why? Everybody's resistant to change. And nature's resistant to change. Water flows downhill. It doesn't go uphill. It always takes the path of least resistance. And, frankly, people do the same thing many, many times. However, people have the ability to decide and decide to do something different, decide to go against the grain, decide that they want to achieve or accomplish something else. And so what David did is he said, I'm going to understand what are the components that overcome resistance. And resistance goes up and down depending on the intensity or the complexity of whatever the change is all about. But what he said is this. He said, hey, listen, one of the reasons people change is dissatisfaction. They're not happy with where they're at. Now, that's not enough. And if you look at a formula, you've got to have everything on the left-hand side, right? Those are multipliers. If anything is 0, it doesn't work. So with dissatisfaction, you also have to have vision. Vision is just simply that. Where is it? What would you like to have happen? So you could be in a lot of pain. That could be your dissatisfaction. And you just want the pain to go away. And in that case, you have a very high dissatisfaction component and maybe not a big vision component. But you could be in a place where, you're okay, but you really want something else. Life could be so much more, in which case you could have a fairly low dissatisfaction component and a high vision component. Either way, whatever that works out, right, you've got to have both of those. You've got to have some component of both of those. And then after you have that, and only after that, you get to the next state. And the next state is first steps, right? I need to know how to achieve, or how do I move from dissatisfaction to vision. Now, when you think about sales or behavioral change, sales is a behavioral change model. It says, don't buy that product, buy this product. Don't do nothing, do something, right? We're looking for other people to change their particular behavior. And so the key to this from a conversational standpoint, and most salespeople, well, I know a lot of salespeople that do this. They come jumping in and they say, hey, listen, Mr. Business Owner, would you please buy my product? It does X, Y, and Z. And they don't know what the dissatisfaction or vision components are of the prospect. And they may or may not hit the need or the want that the prospect has. When that happens, the presentation is sort of a glancing blow, and typically it fails. And so the rule here is that you need to understand the D for dissatisfaction, the V for vision, and the first steps. First steps, you, the salesperson, are the one that presents first steps. Once you understand their dissatisfaction, their needs, Once you understand their vision, their wants, then you can present your product in the terms that fit their dissatisfaction and their vision. So let's ask yourself a question, right? So how would your sales presentation go if you knew the exact problem that needed to be solved? How would you match your product to that need? Would you talk about all the features that don't fit, that don't really matter, that aren't important? Or would you hammer hard on the ones that fit best? I mean, the reality here is that if we get the dissatisfaction and the vision in advance, and we position our sales, our first steps is to, typically from a sales standpoint, is to work with me. I can help you, I can solve this problem, and this is how you do it. You don't have to know all the steps, you just need to know the first steps, right? Then we can get that position to move, right? We start to overcome that resistance. All right, so dissatisfaction and vision and first steps. And maybe you need to have better questions for dissatisfaction. Maybe you need to have better questions for vision. Let's take a minute. Let's make the right moves to enhance your business and sales success. Take a minute to jot down your key notes and post them in the chat box if you'd like to share. All right, so now we're going to talk about the pillars of persuasion. Robert Cialdini, another psychologist, wrote a book called Persuasion, The Art of Influence. And he identified 6 different categories of persuasion. I'm the one that kind of titled them Pillars of Persuasion just because I like the way that sounds, right? So here's what you got in the Pillars of Persuasion, right? The very first pillar is reciprocation. This is the oldest persuasion tool in the history of mankind. This is simply, would you watch my stuff while I go to the bathroom? And then I'll watch your stuff when you go to the bathroom, right? Very simple persuasion. And it works simply with simpler ideas and concepts. The Hare Krishnas used to be at the airport all the time back when I was growing up back in the 70s. And they would be there and they would hand out flowers to all of the travelers that were coming off of planes. And then they would have a little bucket where you would throw a dollar, you give them a donation. And so, you know, the dollar obviously was worth a lot more than the flower, but, you know, whenever you got a flower, you felt like you were committed, right? So whenever somebody does you a favor or does something for you, you feel like you're indebted, right? So think about that. How many times have you ever asked someone to watch your stuff or have somebody ask you to watch their stuff? How often have you bought a coffee for someone else? What happens? That's relationship starts, right? And that's the very beginning. So reciprocation is the first most powerful pillar in the persuasion model. All right. And the second one is commitment and consistency. Now, what we know is that for people to make decisions, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. And it's actually been measured that the glucose they can measure the burn rate of glucose in the brain during the decision-making process, and it burns and gets used up a lot faster during the decision-making process. So there's an energy component there, right? And that's maybe part of what resistance is. And the key here is that once somebody has decided to make a commitment, once they've said, yes, I will, you've crossed that bridge, right? And so they don't necessarily want to do that again. It's a lot of work and effort. And so they will work hard to validate and justify and continue with that decision and stay consistent with that decision. So clearly you can start with small commitments and work your way up to bigger and bigger and bigger commitments. And so that's one of the keys of the pillars of persuasion. So here's another one, likability. Now we all know that likability is really important. I mean, how many of you have been in a situation where you just, you know, didn't like the person you were talking to? You didn't like the salesperson. You didn't enjoy the conversation, right? So if you don't have some form of likability, you know, you're going to be behind the curve on the persuasion model. All right. And today, more than ever, things like social proof are really, really important. Now, 10 years ago, before the internet, before social media, right, this was just what your friend said or a family member or an associate or a coworker said. That's how you got social proof. But how many of you use the internet today and go to Yelp or Google to check reviews before you go to a new restaurant? I mean, do you even know the people that are doing those reviews? You have no idea. And yet they persuade you to go there. and visit that restaurant. I know it happens to me all the time. So social proof, big P. What do other people say about you and your products and your services? And then we take a look at authority. There are two kinds of authority. One, you're the boss, and you can tell somebody you have to do this, and if you don't do this, you're going to have big consequences. The other one, as an authority, is to be an expert. If you're an expert, if you have expertise that's greater, stronger, better, more effective than the next person, then you are going to be a little bit more persuasive. People are going to look to you with more credibility. People will look to you to be a better solution, right? So authority is a key component. So what can you do today to enhance or increase your credibility and expertise? I worked with a very young auto mechanic, and one of his questions was, people don't, he was in his early 20s, 21, 22, had already started his mechanics business. And one of his concerns was that people didn't take him seriously. He was too young. He couldn't have any experience. And he literally put all of his awards and certificates and everything else on the wall, and he used those tools to demonstrate his authority, his credibility, his expertise. All right, and then the last one is scarcity. And the rules are this: it's just supply and demand, right? So the less supply there is, the greater demand. The greater the supply, the lesser the demand. And when you can say, when you're the best and you've positioned yourself as the one and only source, and you've met all of these other items here, now you've put yourself in the most effective persuasion position possible, right? And so with scarcity, one of the stories in the book, they talk about there's only 2 cookies left, right? How much does everybody want those cookies? How quickly do they go to it? How quickly do they get after it? Because there's only 2. When the cookie jar is full, people just take them once in a while, not a big deal. But when there's only 2, demand increases and they go. And the automobile is classically involved in scarcity, right? Because whenever they put those advertisements in the newspaper, it says something like, 1 on the lot today, so hurry down. All right, so let's talk about making the right moves here to enhance your business and sales success. So take a minute and jot down your notes, right? Now, I'm going to offer you a copy of this recording, right? So if you give me that survey, I will give you a copy of this recording, so you don't have to worry about every little thing here. You can scroll through it. But what can you do to add in? Which areas of the Pillars of Persuasion do you think it would be valuable for you to work? All right. So jot those down. I hope some of you are writing these things down as you're putting them onto your piece of paper. Now, we could take a minute here. Does anybody want to share what they're thinking about doing from Pillars of Persuasion? If you do, go ahead and put it on the chat box, and we'll cover that either at the end, any questions at the end with Tammy. But I know we're on a fairly tight schedule, so I kind of want to roll through this and make sure that you get all the information. Okay, so now we're going to transition to the impact that persuasion strategies have on business results. So most of you, I'm certain, are familiar with sales, but let me show you how we break it down. We talk about 3 formulas, and this will be totally clear to you because revenue occurs in several different places, and we're going to talk about all the different places where that is, because that's important. It makes a big difference. Watch. Okay, so 3 everyday formulas. And the first one is the customer formula. We need to know how many customers we have. We'd certainly like to get some more customers, right? And the second one is how much money are we making? What's the revenue formula? And the third one is what's the profitability formula? All right, so the customer formula really starts with the number of marketing leads. And in this case here, we're going to say leads, 500 people. These are people that have been exposed to your product and exposed to your compelling message, right? If we have a success rate of 20%, right? So 20% of those prospects decide to buy our product, right? So 1 out of 5, then we will have 100 customers, right? That's the customer formula. It's the leads times the effective success rate, and that will give you the number of customers. Now that effective success rate, that is your sales conversion rate, right? Make that number go up through services and products like this webinar, and you end up with more customers. I'll show you how that works in just a little bit. So this is the customer formula. And then we take a look at the revenue formula, right? The revenue formula says take the number of customers times the average sale times the sales per period, and that will give you your revenue, right? So we have 100 customers from the line before, right? And then we're going to multiply that times $30 from an average sale amount. Now the average sale amount is another, this is one of the things we really want to do. We would love to charge higher prices, right? But we don't necessarily know how. We're going to cover that when we get done with this particular part of the presentation. Is how do we sell on non-price issues? That's a real big deal. But if we could increase that average sale amount, that would be really effective. And then the sales per period. Really, this is how often does somebody come and buy. And so in this particular case, we end up with a revenue total of $6,000, right? Okay, and then if we take a look at the gross profit formula, it says take the revenue from the line before, subtract out your cost of goods, and you'll end up with a gross profit number. So we had $6,000. If cost of goods is 50%, then we'll have a gross profit number of $3,000, right? It looks like I doubled up on my slides. All right, so now let's talk about the power of compounding. Now, with the power of compounding, this is compound interest, right? This is what Albert Einstein quoted as the most powerful formula on the planet. The idea of compound interest is one thing compounding on top of another. All right, so if we take this model, right, and we take our little customer formula that we were talking about before, and we say, let's make a 10% impact on what we're doing here, right? So then the number of marketing leads would be up 50, that'd be 550, right? But if we make a 10% impact also on our success rate, right? So it goes up to 22% instead of 20%. So we get just 2% better, right? Now all of a sudden we end up with 121 customers, right? And that's a 21% impact. So just by getting 10% better on a couple different things, that's a 21% impact. Now, I'll also tell you, I'm going to interrupt right here and say, hey, listen, one of the other things I have as an encouragement for you to fill out that survey for me is I've got a list of all the different marketing lead strategies that we have. If you're interested in that, put marketing or marketing leads on your survey, and I'll send you a copy of that list. I think you'll appreciate what that is. All right, so along with the customer formula, then we have to go to the revenue formula, right? And so now we have 121 customers. And if we increase our average sale amount to $33, and here's what we want to do. We want to be able to increase our average sale amount. We want to have our loyalty increase, and we want to have the frequency of buying increase. We want all of those things. That's how we're going to get our sales to get better. But in order to do that, we're going to have to focus on some things besides price. We're not going to be able to do that. All right. Now, the average sale amount, some people say, and I will make this comment, some people say that, no two things that I ever sell are the same. And no two invoices are the same. But if you want to capture the average sale amount, then you just take the sum of all those different invoices, add them all up. If you have 50 different invoices, what's the sum of all 50 invoices divided by 50? And that's your average. Right now, maybe no one invoice matches that, but that is still your average sale amount. All right, so then if we take sales per period and we try to make it a little bit better, all right, we get to 2.2. Now all of a sudden we've got 8,785, right? And I've got a 46% increase in revenue just by getting 10% better at each one of these things. All right, so we take a look at the gross profit formula, and that'll roll straight through, right? So we have a 10% impact on revenue, same cost of goods. Now, if you were able to reduce the cost of goods, that number would get even better. And your gross profit now is $4,392, 46% growth in profit. Now, 3 of these categories are really important when it comes to sales, right? The average price amount, the conversion rate, and how often does somebody buy. So in 1 year, right, if we do this thing here, we can make a really big difference in value, right? So we can go from $30,000 to $51,000. That's a big number, right? And then in 5 years, right? That's a 3-year revenue result, I'm sorry. So in 3 years, we've got another really big number. All right, so the key to this information and knowledge, right, is about, what does increasing sales and our sales conversion ability, how does that get better, right? How do I make that more effective? So now we're going to talk about, selling on non-price issues. And there's an entire industry of professionals who teach companies that sell expensive products and services how to position against competition. Now, top salespeople, they sell expensive products. They make more money. They get bigger commission on expensive products, and they sell them all day long. And the key is to focus on non-price issues, right? Issues that aren't price related. Now, at this point, what I want you to do, there's a worksheet in the chat box, and you can download it. And you're going to want to download that worksheet so that you can fill in the answers here. Because this is the next stage of all of our stuff. So you've got your document where you've been capturing your action items for each one of the categories. And so now I want you to download that worksheet. And it's a fillable PDF. So you can fill it out as we go along. And I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to help you fill that out and give you the information you need to put it in the check boxes and review it. And then I'll recap it, so don't worry too much about being perfect. But this is the way that you're really going to get a lot of value out of this particular part of the session. And that worksheet comes straight out of a superior selling skills tool set that we have with Brian Tracy. And it's really all about selling on non-price decisions. So we know that price pretty often arises early in just about every sales conversation. But the reality is price isn't the reason. It's very seldom the reason that a customer decides to buy something or decides not to buy it. And really, if low price was the major reason for buying decisions, then nothing expensive would ever get sold. Nobody would buy expensive cars or watches or homes or clothes. And yet we know people buy that stuff. So price can't be the only key. And so the key is to figure out what are those other things. And the best salespeople really sell on the basis of value and quality and utility. So higher value for the product, better quality, more usefulness, dependability, last longer, better service. These are all non-price components. You know, they get maybe they have a better reputation in the marketplace. They take care of the customers better. They don't use the sales conversation to talk about price. Now, conversely, those that kind of fight the price wars all the time, they always seem to be going out of business. You know, the problem is they have a hard time making enough money to make their customers happy. So by now, you should have downloaded that worksheet, and we'll start going through page 1 on that. So price arises all the time, and often it's early, right? But it's only one of several issues. And according to research, 94% of sales in America are determined by issues other than price. Your job is to figure out what they are. And 6% of those sales are based solely on price, and that's for commodities, but even commodities can be differentiated, right? A gas station, when I was growing up, before the gas crisis, there were a lot of corners where there was a gas station on every single corner. And the price would be different. It could be totally different because each gas company decided to offer their services differently. It could be full serve, it could be self-serve, it could be with air and water, and it could be with a credit card and without a credit card. There's a whole lot of differentiation things that businesses do that don't have anything to do necessarily with price decisions. And you get to decide what you want. So your job really is the job of the salesperson really is to differentiate your product or service from the competition, right? So the answers to the questions in the workbook are several and solely and differentiation. So there are several different issues. Rarely do people solely make decisions based on price, and the key is to differentiate your business. Differentiate what it is that you do from the competition. All right, so there are 7 attributes that are more important to price when it comes to making a buying decision. Now, these are really good. These are really important, and I think you know most of these, but we're going to go through them anyways, right? Number 1 is quality. Quality means, you know, how suitable is this product to the customer? It means the product or service that you sell conforms to what it is that they're looking for. They're happy with it, right? Quality is number 1. Second factor is delivery. Fast, dependable, predictable delivery, you know, consistently. Domino's Pizza, I mean, they are the standard when it comes to this, right? They said, I'll deliver a pizza within 30 minutes. And they built a restaurant chain of something like over 8,000 different restaurants, and obviously became remarkably successful. Third factor is installation, right? So installing the product with security and making it worry-free, helping people save time, those are really, really important. In particular with technology today, because technology is so complex. We can't possibly even keep up with complexities like that. And so anybody that will help us with installation can be really, really valuable. Now, another attribute that's important is service, right? Helpfulness, speed, dependability. These are all things that are really important, and people will pay more for service. People will drive, I'm in Southern California, we've got a freeway system, and people will drive 50, 60, 70, 100 miles out of their way to go to the right restaurant because they're getting the right thing, right? And so when you think about service, you can pre-order things on the web and pick up. Things can be delivered to your door. It's quick, convenient. Amazon just kills it on this particular case, right? It shows up the next day. So another non-price factor is payments, or simplicity of down payments, right? Simplicity of billing and maybe interest rates. Today, the world is moving towards a subscription model, right? So you don't have to pay one big price. What you do is you pay maybe a startup or a setup fee or something like that, and then you pay a monthly price. And it's a lot easier for people to handle the monthly price than it is to handle the whole big 9 yards price, right? And so it doesn't matter how you do it, but setting up a system that allows you to make it very easy for somebody to buy your product is an important component. So another important factor is follow-up support, trouble-free ownership, right? How do we make it simple? We could say we guarantee our product. We guarantee it unconditionally, 3 years, there's a time frame. There's never a cost. If you have a problem, we'll fix it, we'll repair it. Dell Computers had a long story about that in the sense that, if they had anything wrong with their computer, they would fix it and repair it without issue. They would just take care of it. And these are the kinds of things that influence buying decisions, right? And then lastly, the one we talk about is responsiveness. Fast repairs, fast assistance. And speed is really important. In fact, most of us understand, at least I do, and I think a lot of people do the same thing, that it's not a question about when it won't work or if a problem will show up. I mean, it's not when it won't work or when a problem will show up, but if it will. It's not a question of if, it's more when. It will. They will show up. We know this. The question is, how fast will somebody fix it? Right? The guy that fixes it fast, the woman that fixes it fast, the company that fixes it fast, that's the company that we tie into, right? So responsiveness. Now, FedEx is a classic letter. They're faster, right? Overnight. And UPS has kind of adopted the same thing. FedEx is close to a $60 billion a year company. And they cost a heck of a lot more than the post office. And yet we're certainly willing to spend the money with FedEx. And so the 7 key factors are quality, delivery, installation, service, payments, easy payments, follow-up, and responsiveness. Right, so here they are right here. Quality, installation, service, simplicity, support, follow-up, and being responsive. All right, so let's talk about how do we lower price resistance, right? This is another key component. When we talk about lowering price resistance, there's a couple different things to do. There's some values that a company creates as a result of their marketing activities that lower price resistance. So one instance is high-level advertising. And when you spend high-level advertising, this is television advertising, very nice brochures, it increases the credibility and the perceived value of the product or service. I mean, why advertising is so important is that if a product is well advertised, we think it must be good. And the reality is that most people, me included, we have a tendency to buy a name product over a no-name product because that's how we find it was well advertised, right? It makes a big difference. So another marketing factor that lowers price sensitivity is reputation, right? If you have an excellent reputation in the marketplace, this will increase the perceived value of what you sell. Now, Apple is the gold standard here, right? Apple is not inexpensive. Apple offers a phone, they offer computers. You can get phones and computers a lot of places. But Apple charges a premium price, and yet people still line up around the block to get that release, right? They have this excellent reputation. They have this reputation for being higher value, higher quality, and they are able to charge a much higher price. And then, so another fact that lowers price resistance from a marketing standpoint, right? If you have, if your company or you have good public relations, right? You've got good image, you contribute or support to worthy causes, you have good sales materials, good artwork, good brochures, all of these things increase the perceived value of the products or services. Now, the other thing that really plays a big difference here is excellent salesmanship. The best top companies are really, really careful about selecting, their salespeople, and they put them through serious training programs, 3, 6, and 9 months, because they know that the people they have on their team are the face of their company. And those top salespeople are better at solving problems. They're more knowledgeable. They're better equipped to create the solutions that are necessary for the business owner. And so those are going to overcome some price resistance issues, right? So advertising, really important. Your reputation, your public your image, so to speak, public relations, sales materials, and excellent salesmanship. Really, really important and valuable in lowering price resistance. And again, the idea here through this presentation is that you then develop a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox that allow you to have conversations other than price. All right, so let's talk about tactics that diminish price concerns. We're going to continue this story, right? There are 3 factors that you can create in the sales conversation. First, you can try to create high desirability. The more the customer desires or wants your product or service, the less concerned they are about the price. Now, this goes back to Gleischer's formula, right? When we really nail their dissatisfaction and their vision, their needs and their wants, you're going to increase the desirability and the fact that they know you get them and they know that you have the product that solves their exact problem. So really big. That's how you increase desirability. The second factor that's really important, and this goes back to our pillars of persuasion, is scarcity, right? If you only have a limited quantity of your product or service, right, then you can charge a little bit more. You're going to increase the demand and you can increase the price for that particular product or service. And then the last factor is urgency. So when somebody really wants or needs it right now, and you think about the airlines, right? If you try to buy an airline ticket at the last minute, you're going to pay some really big dollars for that because there's no other choice. There's no other way around it. So, you're going to have to do what you have to do. So the 3 categories here that we're talking about are desirability, scarcity, and urgency. Now, you've got to develop an ongoing strategy for winning the price wars in your market. You got to offer an easy, problem-free relationship. Now, you could go to different restaurants, you could go to different people, but when it's easy and it's problem-free, number one, you're going to go back. It's a lot more fun. My son is getting married in November, and they had selected a wedding venue, and ultimately they changed that wedding venue because that service, that location, just was a challenge for them to deal with. We were just talking about it last night. And they found another service, and they're taking, they're just so much more happy at the next level, right? So easy, problem-free relationship. Now you need to emphasize reliability and dependability, and the way you do that, is you do things quickly. People love it when you do things fast, right? Whenever somebody comes, sure, I'll take care of that right away. I'll deliver that. I'll call you back. I'll send someone out. This is what I like. This is what people want. Now, being consistent and predictable, right? The most important ability in business is dependability. And Brian uses mixes those words all the time, but dependability. Now, if you think about Walmart, you think about McDonald's, no matter where you go, if you walk into any Walmart, you're going to get low prices. If you walk into any McDonald's, you're going to get the same quality of food, and you're probably going to get low prices too, right? But that's consistent and predictable. That's what drives people there. You have to react quickly to the needs and concerns of your customers if you're going to build that loyalty, right? If you're fast and quick, you can always build that loyalty, right? And so you should always be looking for ways to shorten the amount of time that you spend servicing your customers. There are companies that have reorganized their entire operation to take speed to market and speed to service and make it a primary factor. It literally turned around different companies. So you're really looking at problem-free, dependability, being consistent, being quick, and continually focusing on a shorter amount of time to deliver your goods and services to your customer. All right, so another way is, with respect to selling on non-price issues, is for you to demonstrate your knowledge and confidence. Now, this goes back to that authority model in Pillars of Persuasion, right? If you're more knowledgeable and more confident about your product, how you can help the customer, they're going to put a higher value on your products and services. So be a consultant, be an advisor to your customer, and help teach them how they can most benefit, this makes a huge difference in their perception of value. And it totally, I mean, when you teach them how to use it, I mean, you're adding value. I mean, it's just very simple. You're adding value to that particular model. And it drops their concern about price because they know they're getting more, right? Now, what about regular and predictable sales calls and follow-ups? Now, I'm busy, and I think everybody's busy. If you ask people at the end of the day, how was their day? They say busy. It's just the way it is. Ask your customer afterwards how often they would like to stay in touch with you, right? Or how often they would like you to stay in touch with them. The key to this is, and for me, I'm looking at it and say, listen, I don't need a follow-up every week or a day or anything like that, but I really appreciate you asking me when to follow up, and I like to touch base on a monthly basis. But the fact that you offered to follow up is a big component, because you have a follow-up system is a big component. So another thing you can do is offer a total product or service line, what we call one-stop shopping. Now in Focal Point, business coaching, we're sort of a one-stop shopping business environment, right? We focus in on clarity, efficiency, marketing, sales, and leadership. There are some companies that focus in on sales, some companies that focus in on marketing, some focus on leadership. We're the one-stop. We do all of that thing. We're very foundational, so it fits with every particular business. So for you and your company, right, what are those one-stop shopping things? What are those? What should you be, right? Ultimately, we have to be able to explain the exact reasons for our prices. People will still ask us, even though we're focusing the conversation on non-price issues, they will still ask us why we charge more and why our competitors charge less. And we have to be prepared to explain exactly the depth, breadth of quality and service and why it's so much more valuable to pay us the price that they're going to get so much more with us than they're going to get with the competition. Now, if you have something on the technical side and you can offer technical education or backup on what you sell, if you have a product that has requirements and you can put together 24-hour service, or you can service 7 days a week, those things are really, really important. So here, in this case here, when we talk about demonstrating, attacking non-price issues, we're talking about demonstrating your knowledge and competence, increasing your authority, having regular and predictable sales calls and follow-ups, one-stop shopping, right? Putting that package together, making sure that you have the exact reasons why you charge more, and then if you can support it, if your service does that, putting together a backup plan. All right, so we're going to talk about preference categories right now. There are 7 preference categories that determine purchase decisions and purchase behavior. So the first one is what we call, and this is in order of importance, right? So number 1 is the most important. First one is called personal preference, right? People pay more and they value things that make them feel better about themselves, give them a better experience, trigger their emotions, make it more enjoyable. Think about that. In Southern California, we have multiple theme parks. There's Universal Studios, there's Knott's Berry Farm, there's Disneyland, and Magic Mountain. And by far, the number 1 out there is Disneyland. And guess what? Disneyland's the most expensive one, right? And Disneyland has throngs and throngs of fans, right? And it's just because people are connected, they have a personal preference for Disneyland over those other items. Another type of preference is called operational preference, right? And this is the impact of your product or service on somebody's life or the work or how it really improves their productivity and makes their job better, right? So that's an operational preference. Then we have this thing called the functional preference. The third type of preference is called the functional preference. And this is how your product or service actually works or performs. Now, some people like certain functions over others. Some people like high-tech functions. Today, you can get an app on your phone that controls your lights at home, that turns on the heater, turns on the air conditioning, turns on your pool, turns on the pool lights, turns on the jacuzzi, all of those things. And those are all remarkable functions, right? So functional preference. Some people have functional preferences. All right, so then we've got this one called result preferences. And a result preference is what are the results that I get from this particular product or this particular service? We're showing here a shopping area, right? Lots of different jeans. Somebody's going to have to figure out those things. Now, there's not a whole lot of results here. This is probably more of a personal preference one than it is a result preference. But a result preference could be, you have better results, and in terms of insurance or financial advisors or coaching, whoever has better results, that's what a lot of people are looking for. They have a result preference. Now, when you think about preferences, it could be a bunch of different features, right? Or what we call attributes. And if you have more attributes and features, it might be applicable to somebody, right? So they might have a desire to have more of those attributes and features. So some people focus in on being the best in one thing, and some people try to offer many, many features. And again, some people are going to say, hey, listen, I appreciate having all of those different features, right? So it's a component. And the automotive industry is notorious for this. They have all of the different features. There are thousands. Every automotive commercial that you see, and it's sports and it's football season right now, so car commercials are on every 30 seconds, it seems like. But every one of them, all of those car commercials are touting different features. Ultimately, we have this comparative preference, and this is really how do you position yourself against the competition, right? And depending on how that positioning is, your image is better, your service is better. All of those things play a role in the comparative preference. And then the last item on this list is price preference, right? So all of those other items that we talked about are more important than price. It goes with personal preference, then operational preference, then functional preference, results preference, attributes or features preference, comparative preference, and price preference, in that order. All right, so now we've covered the basic meat of the selling on non-price issues. And remember, price is always relative to value, and it's how it is perceived by the customer. Price is a measure of his or her wants or needs, right? That's the dissatisfaction and the vision, and it's part of the intensity. How much do they really want it, right? It's a function of desire. How much do they want? How much do they really need? Focus on those areas where you can win against your competitors, and we're going to talk about answering some questions right now to help us figure that out. I'll give you a few minutes after each one of these, not a few minutes, a little bit of time after each one of these to really understand it, to take the information that you've just gathered through this last section, selling on non-price issues, and identify what you want to do with it, right? So first question, give 3 reasons why your higher price product or service is superior to a lower price competitor. And this is the inner game of selling. Give 3 reasons, try to do it fairly quickly. If you don't come up with 3, then this is an area where you might need a little bit of work. This might be part of your X. Give you a little bit of time to write those down. It takes a little bit of time to write them down. And then the second one, really, the next step is to say, okay, what are the 3 most important features of your product or service that are more important than price, that allow you to charge a higher price against lower priced competitors? What are the 3 most important features? Now, this is on your worksheet, so you shouldn't have to write those questions down. And again, if you don't have 3, okay, this might be a place you want to do a little bit of work. So the next one is, what 3 values does your company create or offer that add to the perceived value of your product? Is it your image? Is it your speed? One stop? What are the top 3 things you can think of that are really important there? 3 values. Again, if you can't come up with 3, that's fine. This might be a place for you to do a little bit of work. All right, so next question. What 3 activities, what are 3 things that you could do, that you could engage in to increase the perceived value of your products and services? What are 3 things that you can do? Make sure to say this, make sure to say that. Make sure that we understand the dissatisfaction and the vision first. These are some different things that you can do to increase the value. And it's about increasing the perceived value. All right. All right, so let's talk about the 3 benefits. What are the 3 benefits that you offer, right, that you can emphasize, right, where you're going to say, we do X, Y, and Z, to reduce price concerns, right? We are the experts. That's one of the best ones that's there, right? We're one-stop shopping. That's another point where we can reduce price concerns. It's easier for us to work for us. And then what are the 3 most important preference categories to your customers in determining their purchase decisions? Is it function? Is it operations? Is it personal? Is it results? Is it that you're better than the competition, that your product is better, that it's more effective? What are the 3? I know in the coaching, you know, it's certainly, there's a personal preference that's associated with it, but it's really all about results, right? If we deliver results, then that's how we get clients. If we don't deliver results, you know, it's harder to get clients. Don't get any clients who can't deliver results. All right, and then ask yourself, okay, what 3 ways can you better position your product or service against your competition to make your product or service appear more attractive? How do you position that? What do you say? What do you do? This could go in your print advertising. It could go in your online advertising. It could be in your sales conversation, all of those things. And then once you've answered those 3, and again, if you don't have 3 in each one of those, then that might be a place you want to do a little bit of work. All right. And I know we went fast. We're running out of time. I'm bumping up against it, and we're almost done. I've got 3 more minutes here. So here the key is, what is your X? So right now, if you've written down different things based on the Carnegie Triangle or Gleiser's formula or the Pillars of Persuasion or the way to wealth or selling on non-price issues, I mean, you might have a long list of things, and the key is, how do we truncate that down, right? So what are the top 3 things you learned today? What are the things that you've learned today that are most important to you? I would love for you to share this with me on the survey, right? And again, my request of you is that you fill out that survey and send it to me. We're going to send it to you right after this, right after the session. Fill out that survey and send it to me. So what are the top 3 things you learned today? Right? This is what the value you got out of this hour. You just donated an hour of your time, and we hope that you get something important.
I did put a link to the survey out in the chat box.
I'm seeing a message here that my screen sharing has paused.
Yeah, you're on watches.
Tammy, is my screen sharing paused? Did I mess up something?
Can you not hear me? John?
All right, well, I'm going to continue on, and hopefully that's not the case. I'm not certain I know how to fix that. Well, maybe I can do. I'll do a stop share and then a reshare.
Can you hear me, John?
All right, so it looks like it's sharing now. So the question here, again, we were just talking about what are the top 3 things you learned today. So new webinar software. I apologize if some of that didn't come off the way we wanted it to. We talked about the 3 things you learned today, and then ultimately we want to ask yourself here, right? Closing thoughts, right, on that same sheet of paper. What are 3 things you can do and that you can complete today to make this a valuable webinar, to make this a valuable hour of your time? What are the 3 things you're going to do, right? And in the interest of brevity, I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the next one, and I would love to know what this is on your survey. And again, please send me that survey. I really appreciate that. Ultimately, as our way of saying thanks, you can get a copy of today's recording, and you can also get access. We have a brand new Make the Right Moves coaching forum. It's an online private Facebook group that has videos like this and all kinds of other material and information. And if you're interested in that, just put coaching forum on the survey. And but to receive your gift, you have to send the survey. You must send the survey to me, right? John@BusinessWhitt.com. That'll work out just perfect, right? Now, remember that there's a Brian Tracy ebook, if you want to put that up there regarding the triangle. There's the relationships management stuff that we talked about from Gleiser's formula. There's the way to wealth formula. I'm happy to send all of those things to you if you just put those on the survey. All right, so in closing, our next seminar is February 15th, and it's going to be on the art of effective communication. So mark your calendars for February 15th. It'll be at the same time in the morning, 9 o'clock a.m. And I just want to say, thank you all for participating. I encourage all of you to make the right moves for your business. Start today. Start making better moves to your business, and do that every single day. Thank you so much, and hope to have you join us again next month.